Hi, this is Charles Hoskinson broadcasting live from warm, sunny Colorado. So, a little something to talk about today. It's related to freedom, and it's related to one of the reasons why I'm an entrepreneur and one of the reasons I hate governments. Uh, you know, in America, this coronavirus has become a deeply partisan issue where it's perceived that if you're Republican, you're anti lockdown and anti mask and anti science. And if you're a Democrat, you're pro science, pro mask, pro lockdown, and trust the doctors. And I've gotten to a point where I've just lost all tolerance and faith in what's happened right now. There is no science and no medical rigor behind anything that is currently happening with the FDA in the United States right now. None. And I want to talk about this because I made a tweet and about Texas reopening, and I just had all these people come and say, "Oh, it's so sad that Cardano is getting so political and Charles is abandoning science." You are propagandized. And let's actually get into the facts, the real facts. There are 5 vaccine platforms that we know beyond a reason of a doubt are safe and effective. Only 3 of the 5 are available in America right now. So there's Pfizer and Moderna. They were the first to come in December. Johnson & Johnson, that's the latest to be approved. But there are 2 others, Novavax and AstraZeneca. Millions of people have received the AstraZeneca vaccine. We know the AstraZeneca vaccine is at least as safe and as effective as the Johnson & Johnson and Pfizer and Moderna vaccines. The FDA and our medical authorities have been closely following the data from the UK and other places where this vaccine is being given. They're fully aware that it's statistically insignificant, the differences between these platforms. It is not available in the United States. For reasons unknown to me or medical professionals, they've decided to wait until the US clinical trial passes to approve the AstraZeneca vaccine in the United States, despite the fact that they have 10 times as much data as whatever the phase 3 clinical trial will reveal. There's a price difference in the AstraZeneca vaccine. It costs about $3.50 per dose. The Pfizer vaccine cost over $30 per dose. Is that trust the scientists to say that we already have overwhelming data, a UK clinical trial, it's been approved in Europe, it's been approved in the UK, it's been approved in India, and millions of people have received it, but we're just going to ignore it until June, even though there's a vaccine shortage and people are dying today? Where's the science and trust of medical professionals there? You tell me. The Novavax vaccine, they completed a phase 3 clinical trial in South Africa and the UK to the same level of rigor and standard that the US clinical trial would have, including exposure to the variants in South Africa and on patients who have HIV. It was proven to be 89% effective. Also, a protein subunit vaccine, by that platform's nature, is likely the safest of all the vaccines. There's no DNA interaction, no RNA interaction. It's just basically a protein. That vaccine, we're going to wait until the US clinical trial is finished in May or June before approving it. It's one of the cheapest to manufacture and easiest to mass manufacture, with the Serum Institute in India committed to make several billion doses this year. We have a pandemic. People are dying right now. You tell me, is that science? Is that medicine? Is the doctors in charge when they have the data? It's the same standard, but we're not going to approve it until another clinical trial is done. Why not? Okay, let's talk about mutations and strains. There is zero plan right now in the United States, the WHO, the European Union, or China, the leaders of the world, to vaccinate the bottom 4 billion. What does that mean? Coronavirus will percolate in those areas, and every single year, new strains, new variants will return to America and the European Union and other places. So every year, we will have to have a booster shot for these new variants that appear every year for the rest of our lives until we vaccinate those people. It will take at least a decade, if not longer. Look how long it took to eradicate polio, which is still in some areas, or smallpox. It will take at least a decade to eradicate it in those areas if there's a coordinated international effort to do so. There is none. So the lockdowns never end because there will always be a new variant. There will always be a new strain that comes. Always. Every year, it's coming back. That's a fact. That's where we're at. That's life now. No plan whatsoever. Zero. AstraZeneca, Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, Moderna, and Novavax, all their CEOs have already gone on record saying they're working on booster shots for the current platforms to make them more effective against the South Africa, UK, and other variants that we're seeing. There is no coordinated worldwide genomic surveillance program at the moment to have early detection of new strains and new variants. Where's the science in that? Where's the medicine in that? Where's the leadership in that? There's a famous virologist named Florian Kramer, and he wrote a lovely paper that appeared in peer-reviewed journal called Cell. And he basically said, hey, this is the first of the 21st century pandemics, but more are going to come. So why don't we pre-build the vaccines for the top 100 of these things so that we can have a vaccine out in 4 months instead of a year? Imagine how many lives that would save, especially if we have proper contact tracing and PPE and other such things, and we could take the Taiwan approach. We would likely never have a global pandemic again. There's zero funding for this proposal, even though it only cost a few $1 billion. We spend as much on an F-22 Raptor or an aircraft carrier. Where's the science behind that? Where's the medicine behind that? How much money are we spending on new forms of PPE? New types of masks with positive air pressure, so you don't have to worry about fitting it or shave off your beard. Nothing substantial at all. How much manufacturing capacity are we building so America can permanently make PPE and distribute it instead of being reliant upon China and other nations? No federal subsidy, nothing at all. There's overwhelming evidence that vitamin D has a huge impact on the mortality and hospitalization rate. Are we giving vitamin D to people who are deficient because so many people are? No, it's not even proper to talk about it. But you can see peer-reviewed after peer-reviewed after peer-reviewed paper come through. There's overwhelming observational evidence of the efficacy of ivermectin, a drug that I give to my horses. It's FDA approved. Critical care pulmonologists went to Congress begging for people just to read the research that they have. It's dirt cheap drug. No discussion about it at the FDA level. But yet we're going to talk about remdesivir, a horrendously expensive drug that's brand new. It's never been used before in any context. It failed as an orphan drug for Ebola, and it actually doesn't do much for those who are sick. Where's the science in that? Where's the medicine in that? Let's talk about the vulnerable populations. According to the CDC statistics, over the age of 55, 92% of those people who get coronavirus die over the age of 55. The other 8% of the deaths are under the age of 55. So if you take a look at the totality of all the deaths, 92% of the time, they're in the 55 and older category. Okay? So once those people have either been isolated or vaccinated, you tell me, as a society, is it a good idea to continue the lockdown when the consequences are devastating economic burden, massive increase in the suicide rate, people not getting hospitalized or going and getting medical treatment for other conditions, and as a consequence, spikes in cancer and spikes in conditions untreated, huge amounts of domestic violence and divorce. Longmont is where I live. Every day I drive by, I see more businesses out of business, more people cast into the streets. The starvation of millions of people in the developing world because of the economic calamity of these lockdowns. All lives matter, right? We care about every single person. We don't want people to die. Public policy should prevent deaths. If your public policy causes deaths, shouldn't you stop it? Lockdowns are not free. This is not a partisan issue. The longer you do this, the more economic damage you do, the more irreversible it becomes, the more devastating it is to society. What are they doing in schools? They're putting plexiglass between students. They're telling kids they can't eat with each other or play with each other. We're raising a generation of children with psychological damage and trauma. This is not just an inconvenience. It is a fundamental rewiring of the DNA of society. Every time I walk by old people, they stay away from me, even if they've been vaccinated, because they now think that exposure to people is death. That's what we've done to society. in a year's time. This will never go away because our public policy has no intention of making this go away. There's no desire to vaccinate the developing world. It's a reservoir that will bring it back year by year. So what are the goalposts? 70% vaccination, but then a strain comes through, we reset the clock. So we have to wait 6 to 9 months to revaccinate 70%, so then we can have 3 months where we don't have to wear a mask and put them right back on. All the places that require densely packed people, those are gone forever. No more movie theaters, no more nightclubs, no more bars, no more human socialization. Have sex with a fucking mask on, as the health minister of Ontario told us to do. This is the world that these politicians are broadcasting. It's not scientific. There's no medicine in it. There's no discussion of cost benefit. And there's no acknowledgement that this policy is killing people every day. So yeah, I do applaud Texas for taking the step forward and saying it's time to do something, even if it's a little risky. The vulnerable people have a way out. The Johnson & Johnson vaccines here, the Pfizer vaccines here, the Moderna vaccines here. By the way, where's the government accountability? Johnson & Johnson promised to pre-make the vaccine, regardless if it succeeded or failed. They only have 4 million doses available. They could have had 100 million doses available. Why didn't they? Where's the investigation in that? 100 million of a single shot platform? That could have vaccinated every single person over the age of 55, reducing the mortality rate 92%. There's not even understanding in the general public about what vaccines actually do. They're not here to prevent you from getting sick. The point of the vaccination programs are to prevent you from being hospitalized or getting seriously ill. That's the point. It's okay to have a cold. It's okay to lose your taste for a few days and have it come back. If you're vaccinated with the J&J platform, that's done. So let's talk about the construction of clinical trials. None of the clinical trials took a moment to actually test a single shot platform. We all knew that there would be scarcity in the beginning. So why didn't they run concurrent phase 3 clinical trials with a single shot and a dual shot cohort, so that we could understand if a single shot was sufficient to prevent hospitalization and death? We didn't. Just to J&J. Had we done that alone, we would have doubled the amount of vaccines available to the public. We didn't do it. Let's talk about travel. Did we do anything for sterilizing immunity? Anything. What does that mean? It means that when you take the vaccine, you don't spread it to other people. No. You could have done pharyngeal swabs. There's a whole bunch of things we could have done in the construction of the studies to verify sterilizing immunity. Did we do it? Nope. Maybe we'll figure it out from observational studies. Why is that relevant? Because it tells you a lot about the nature of travel and if vaccination's worth anything. If you can spread it post-vaccine, you're as good as an asymptomatic super spreader, right? Was that done? No, for cost. Where's the science in that? Where's the medicine in that? Honestly, why didn't we nationalize these vaccines? You tell me. It's worthwhile shutting the entire United States down. We didn't even do that for World War II or the Civil War, the two big ones in our history. We shut the whole country down. But we're going to allow private companies to own the intellectual property of the skeleton key to unlock it. And we can't apply the Defense Production Act to nationalize those vaccines for the greater good of our country or open source them for all the greater good of everybody. Where's the national manufacturing program for these things? Why was that not more tightly monitored? Where's the science in that? Where's the medicine in that? This is not a partisan issue. It's an issue of authoritarianism versus freedom. And this is not a medical issue anymore. There's a lot of medical things that can be done. There's a lot of sensible policy that can be adopted. This is not a new condition. There's over a year of data and research, more than any disease in human history. There are treatments. There are vaccines. There are ways out of this. There is no coordinated international response to bring us back to normal. And if you allow politicians to tell you to wait just a little bit longer, you'll be waiting 10 years for a solution. And I'm sorry, I can't accept in America where people are afraid of each other on the streets. No one hugs anymore. There's no human contact anymore. And authoritarians tell you, because you don't hold a medical license, to shut the fuck up. And by the way, those who do hold medical licenses, talk to them. Talk to your family doctor. Talk to any physician. A lot of them, privately, in some cases publicly, will tell you that this is political. It's not medical. And they're afraid to speak up for fear of losing their licenses, and they're afraid to speak up for fear of censure and consequences. What kind of a system does that? Get in line. Don't comment. Don't try alternatives. Just go with the orthodoxy. That's what an authoritarian government does. And that's where we're at right now. So when state governments dissent, they will be punished in the media and they will be punished in the mainstream. But then we should watch them and see what happens. Those who are vulnerable, the most vulnerable, they now have an avenue out, and a lot of them have already been vaccinated. Bloomberg tracks it every single day. We're vaccinating at about 1.5 million shots per day. It's a lot of vaccine. Then also ask yourself this as a thought experiment. Why didn't we, as a matter of public policy, vaccinate Hawaii first? Why didn't we take 5% of the supply for the rest of the states and give Hawaii enough that it could vaccinate the entire state in 3 months? So we, the United States, would have a trial marketplace where we could see what the United States will look like in December post-vaccination. And we'd be able to watch and measure the mortality and measure the hospitalization and do genomic surveillance and reopen Hawaii as a model. Perfect place to do it. It's an island. I grew up there. Nope, didn't do it at all. Because we're not interested in the answer. We don't care about the answer. This has nothing to do with science. This has everything to do with control over people. We have the tools to solve this as a society, and the people in charge don't want to. I've come to that conclusion. They like the power. They like the control. They like the influence. Don't know why. I don't know what gets them off about destroying people's lives and devastating small businesses and breaking up marriages and teaching children they should fear each other and convincing the elderly that the mere exposure to another human being is death, as if they're a cancer patient recovering from a destroyed immune system after a bone marrow transplant. This is not normal. This is not the society of freedom. This is a society of authoritarianism. And if you look at China with the Sharp Eyes program, where they're surveilling 100% of the country and social credit, there are authoritarian elements that billions of people in this world will live under over the next 20 years. The people who are in charge right now of the so-called free world admire a lot of these programs, and they want to bring them in. Never forget, there are people politically who say, let no crisis go to waste. And it is our job in a free society to push back and think for ourselves and ask for goalposts. I have no problem with reasonable goalposts. I have no problem with a person telling me wear this until this time and this metric is achieved. Not once since this entire incident began have I been given real goalposts, real vaccination numbers, real mortality rates, real hospitalization rates. They've always changed. They've always been ephemeral. They've always been, we'll wait and see. Not once have I seen a sensible foreign policy about any of this stuff, a coordinated policy amongst the developed world. Not once have I seen anything from the government that would indicate that they actually have a desire for this not to happen again. Few $1 billion to prevent any other pandemic from forming from Florian's work, not even worthwhile considering or talking about. I'm smart enough to know when I'm being lied to, and you are too. So before you go to Twitter and say, oh, you're an idiot, or you're not a doctor, or don't follow the science, I do listen to the scientists. I did a video recently showing you where to go to listen to MIT lectures on this, books to read written by very qualified MD PhDs, podcasts like Vincent's podcast and Let's Talk Virology. It's all there. It's all available. It's all free, or damn near free, on the internet, written by doctors and scientists who've dedicated their lives to thinking about just these things. No one's listening to them. The public policy is definitely not. And I'm sorry, you can't stop people from dying. It's going to happen. Respiratory viruses do that. Life does that. The more question is, what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. And do we care about the world, or do we just care about ourselves? And I'm just tired and fatigued. And I think everyone is tired and fatigued. And I'm very tired of seeing my community being devastated. I will speak up against this, because if I don't, who will? And maybe I'll be deplatformed. I won't have a voice. Okay. But this is a hill that's worth dying on, because it impacts my life, and my country, your country. It impacts whether I have the freedom to travel. It impacts the freedom of whether I can actually talk to people in a reasonable way, whether people fear me just for me being near them as if I'm a leper. This is not okay. This is not a proper society. And I'm willing to take reasonable things if there are clear goalposts. We've never been given them, and they keep moving them whenever they do give us one. I'm tired of this. I'm so tired of this. And it's about time we actually have real science. It's about time we actually have a real discussion about this. And I hope to God that the people who have made these decisions to inflict so much harm on society and been so incompetent in the handling of this have a reckoning in the ballot box and eventually in the courts. There's been overwhelming corruption, criminal conduct, and other things that have happened. Why is it a company that's never shipped a product since when I was born in 1987 awarded a $1.6 billion contract when last year, in 2019, they nearly went out of business? Why didn't we just nationalize them? But Novavax did get its money. Okay. I wonder who got a payday from that with their 3,000% boost in stock price. It's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. It's got to stop. And I'm glad Texas put an end to it. I understand the consequences will be that some people will get sick. Some hospitals will be filled. Why don't we have a national antibody testing program? I don't know. It's been a year. Be easy to do one. We could get a statistical subset and sample it just like we do polling opinions and figure out how many people actually have antibodies. So how close are we to some notion of herd immunity? Apparently, we're told that if you get antibodies from getting naturally sick, that doesn't count. But if you get vaccinated, that counts. But you still have to behave like you're not vaccinated until everyone else gets vaccinated. But by the way, the disease comes back next year and resets the clock. Okay. And yeah, we have some reinfections. They certainly do occur, and variants do exist. And sometimes they're very serious and they're amplified. Most times they're mild. Media doesn't say that. Don't care to say that. It's just fear porn 24/7 a week, every single day. Fear, 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 fear. No one counts the people who have died in India and in Africa and in Southeast Asia as a direct result of the economic calamity. Nobody counts how many people have been raped and murdered and robbed and have had to do inhuman things to survive as a consequence of shutting the world down. Let's look at that scale balance. And you tell me, is it sustainable to have another year or 2 years or 3 years of a lockdown? No. But that's exactly what's being proposed, and no solution's been provided to end the very argument why we keep doing this. So I'm done. I'm just done. And I'm glad that other people are too. And I accept that as a society, consequences will happen. And this has nothing to do with my desire not to wear a mask. I don't really care. A long time ago, when I was a lot younger, I used to clean operating rooms for 8 hours a day, pulling bone chips out of the vents because it was an ortho operating room. Wore a mask. Wasn't a problem for me. Didn't matter to me. That's not the problem here. The problem here is this policy is hurting people, killing people, especially the most vulnerable and the poorest, and it's psychologically traumatizing our children, our elders, and our society. And I'm sorry, it's not worth it, especially now that we actually have the ability to prevent the disease and blunt it to a point where it's less deadly or as deadly as influenza, which we live with without any lockdown every year. So this has to end. Anyway, just wanted to make this video. I am seriously tired. I know you're tired too. And I'm sorry that this has become such a partisan issue in my country. And that if you're on Team Blue, everything I said has to be a lie, unscientific, and apparently I'm just an idiot. If you're on Team Red, it's a great idea. This is not partisan. This is about authoritarianism versus freedom, and this is about what type of society do we want to live in, and do we accept that life sometimes has a little bit of risk? And are we prepared as a society to demand goalposts? And are we prepared as a society to spend our money wisely to prevent this from ever happening again? And why aren't we asking that as a priority? We'd rather debate about who to impeach. We'd rather debate about some question of voter fraud or not than the thing that has shut down our entire planet. That's not apparently priority number one. Okay, don't understand it. And there's no international coordination worth a damn. Don't understand that. Don't understand how millions of people in England can get AstraZeneca vaccine, but we can't, even though we have shortages. Don't understand when people, the largest drug companies in the world, promise 100 million doses when approved, and it's approved, we only get 4. No one asks any question or bats any eyes why they didn't start manufacturing sooner when it has a 6-month shelf life. Don't understand why vitamin D is not on the recommended list when there's overwhelming evidence that it seems to work well. Study after study after study after study. I mean, we just look at what happened in 536. A volcanic eruption blots out the sun for a while. Everybody has a vitamin D deficiency. And then suddenly a giant pandemic happens the next year. Go fucking figure. No, it's your life. Think for yourself. And let's figure this out as a society together. One of these days, we'll actually get out of this and get back to normal.